All right, so I'm a real boxing fan. I'm a fan of the sweet science of the pugilistic prowess of the sport of boxing. Floyd is my favorite fighter, Floyd Mayweather, ever since 1996. 1996, I remember that year vividly. The Olympics. Me and my cousin, his parents, my aunt and uncle, we trekked across half the country in a camper, and we watched the Olympics. That's a memory that's indelible and etched in my mind. And I was a real Sweet Pea Whitaker fan. When I was a kid, was real into just combat fighting. I was into watching Bruce Lee movies, martial arts. I got into boxing. Not, I never got to train or anything. Where I was at, there was no boxing gyms really like that. Um, I kind of wish I was, but anyway, I was real into Sweet Pea Whitaker at that time, and then this guy in the Olympics caught my eye. Later on, I watched Pretty Boy Floyd rise through the boxing ranks, and yeah, he's my favorite fighter of all time. And I know he gets a lot of hate on the internet. And, he's a runner and all this. People don't know shit about boxing really. Floyd is. I could break down on another video why Floyd is the greatest. But anyway, I mentioned Floyd because ever since Floyd, even before Floyd retired, I've seen a few of those so-called greats in the last 7 years. These so-called greats are compared to Floyd. Everybody's talking about the next Floyd. You had, especially again, the last 6, 7 years, it was a kind of a group that started bubbling up. Yeah, like Tank Davis, Adrian Broner, Devin Haney, Earl Spence Jr., Tevin Farmer, Boots Ennis, just to name a few. Probably the most slept on out of all of them, and for good reason, arguably good reasons. Bud Crawford. Those names that come up as the next Floyd or comparing to Floyd or whatever have you. Personally, out of that group that I named, I was most high on Earl Spence just because for a few reasons. A few years ago, I would probably say he's my favorite active fighter, mainly because he's a Texas boy, so I'm biased. And then I just like the way he fights. I like the way he fought. And I was real disappointed in his last showing against Bud Crawford because, that was disappointing. I wonder what the future holds for Earl. But nonetheless, I think he's had a solid career. But I've always been high on Tank as well. Tank was probably my second. I would say if I had to rank, um, Tank has always been like my second favorite active fighter behind Earl Spence. And not to mention, he is the biggest pay-per-view draw, probably besides Canelo. And then Tank does draw his criticism for his opponents a bit, but he's demolished everything that comes in the ring, and he's fought well-known fighters, at least in the boxing community. And then you could argue that there's a paucity, a lack of good fighters in his division. So that's something you could argue. But again, he demolished everything that comes in the ring. So the desire to see him be more challenged is there, of course. I think the main fight that makes sense for him right now is Pitbull Cruz. And then you have Shakur Stevenson, our subject in hand, who we're talking about. And he's been boxing since a kid. He's one of those young prodigies, so to speak. He's had hype around him, and he's undefeated. But he's only had 10 knockouts in 22 fights. And then this last fight was kind of a snooze fest. And it was, the internet is a buzz talking about people being very critical of his showing. People walking out of the arena, showing it on ESPN, and so the talk is increasing. The boxing community is talking. Basically, the boxing community is talking, and the talk is bringing his fighting resume into question. Who he's fought, the timing of his fights, and then how he actually performs in the ring. Again, we making that comparison to Tank. Tank No matter what you line up in front of him, he destroys them at some point. Um, and Shakur just doesn't. He doesn't have that same. He doesn't handle them the same way. I think the biggest fight of his was against Jamel Herring. That's probably he's a good fighter who has a name, but that's about it. He again only 10 knockouts. I was thinking at one time Tank and Shakur would be the next inevitable fight, and it still could be. But while at one time I might have believed that Shakur actually had a chance, which in theory he does, and anybody who steps in the ring has a chance. But now I'm more inclined to believe otherwise. Tank will handle Shakur. I believe that now at this point. Shakur just hasn't done enough. He hasn't done his part since the discussion really came to the forefront, at least in my mind or in the boxing circles that I consort with. Since that first really came to light, Tank and Shakur hasn't done his part to compel any boxing fans to want to see him and Tank at this point. I think Tank and Pitbull is the best fight right now. Um, Not to mention, aside all that, between Shakur, Devin Haney, and you probably throw Ryan Garcia in there. These guys do a lot of talking. They do much talking. And I know that's a part of promotions and part of boxing. But these guys do too much talking without anything to really substantiate the talking. I mentioned Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner at one time, I liked Adrian Broner at one point. Much like Broner was at one point much like Shakur, Broner was a child prodigy, and the comparison to Floyd was pretty loud. I think out of the fighters that I named, I think the comparison was as loud for Broner as anybody else. It was pretty. There's a lot of things that people compare Broner to Floyd about, and for good reason. But Broner did a lot of talking before he really accomplished anything. Again, yeah, you could tell that he was trying to take a playbook out of. He was trying to take a page out of Floyd's playbook, but the thing that made Floyd is that he actually performed in the ring, and Pretty Boy was a knockout artist. A Pretty Boy would knock you out. A lot of people don't realize Floyd basically fought half of his career with a broken hand, with one hand, and he totally adjusted on the back end of his career and still was able to defeat champions. Broner, again, he doing all that talking, and then bam, he got humbled real quick, and he went from being undefeated and being a major subject of that becoming that next guy and to having 3 L's on his resume and a draw, I believe. And then yeah, he'll never at this point he'll never rise to that place of boxing prominence and preeminence that was once anticipated for him. That just won't happen. So I can see Shakur meeting that same fate because at one time there was a lot of hype and talk around Shakur for good reason. I hate to say that because I see the intangibles in Shakur. Again, I'm a real boxing fan, and I see, I'm able to just see the intangibles. I see how great he can be. He just has the way he moves. He has it, and I know he has the boxing knowledge. It's just I don't know. I don't know what the disconnect is. If it's his team, his handlers, or perhaps he just doesn't want to be at that next level. Maybe he's content where he's at. All the talking is just talk, and he really doesn't want to be at that next level. So I don't know. Let's take a look at some of these comments. Of course, Stevenson believes that the people who walked out of his fight were paid to do so. I don't know. Now his fight aren't just boring. I mean, if you're a real boxing fan, if you're a pugilist, you can appreciate to a degree the way Shakur's fight, the way Shakur fights. And yeah, I said I can see, he's a good fighter. It just I don't know if it's the opponents that he chooses or um, the opponents that choose not to really engage with him. But I don't see him making the effort to really engage on that next level. He just does enough. He just does enough to score points and get on out of there. Um, and I don't know. It's making the talk more palpable, more loud, as to for good reason to question whether or not he can really, whether he deserves the hype, whether he deserves the fights, whether he deserves the spotlight. Let's look at some of these comments. Y'all think they were paid to leave? This is from shout out to Say Cheese TV. He said I walked out the bar at the same time. I'm not understanding why people hate his fighting style. Let's see. Did Mayweather have a lot of KOs? Yes. At first he did. Did Mayweather sit in the pocket and fight all 12 rounds? Yes. The game of boxing is to hit and not get hit. That's true. Floyd fought top tier fighters and definitely have knockouts before his hand injuries. Thank you. A lot of people, everybody fails to mention the fact that he fought with an injured hand. That's something that plagued him most of his career, though, especially the back end of his career. Um, yeah, the resume just doesn't match. And I mentioned Mayweather at the beginning because I knew that's the standard. That's the name that people will always compare boxers to, especially in the lower weight divisions. See, there's somebody who knows boxing, who knows his boxing. Yes, Floyd did have a lot of KOs early in his career. True. Over half of Floyd's wins are KOs. Exactly. That's that. There you go. That's what I really didn't want to say, I guess, but it was true. Shakur, I questioned the dog that Shakur got in him. Shakur showing us he has no dog in him. Mayweather put plenty fighters on their ass early on. Shakur acting like he don't trust his reflexes or something. We know the defense top notch, but where the tough offense? Man, that is an assessment. That's a great assessment. He he said it way better than I could have said it. 40-inch vert. Shout out to 40-inch vert. That was a great assessment. Shakur has. I question his dog in him. I agree. And he does act like he doesn't trust his reflexes. I see it. Just as a boxing fan or someone in sports, like in basketball, you've heard analysts say that the eye test. Talk about the eye test. Certain players, uh, the stats might not show the, and they may have questionable performances, but you still see the potential. You see how great they could be, the flashes of it. In basketball, I think of someone like Michael Beasley. All the intangibles. A real hooper can look at Michael Beasley, his game, and be like, that dude. That all hoopers, all real hoopers, will acknowledge hoopers like Michael Beasley, Brandon Jennings. Those are hoopers. They'll go anywhere and they go hoop. And a hooper knows what I'm talking about. If you're not a real hooper, you just don't know. But those are hoopers. But they've had, shaking careers. Injuries, of course, play a part. And I'm just using them as an example of guys who just have that eye test. Shakur, I'd put in that same category. Man, he passes the eye test. He has all the intangibles. You just see it. But when it comes to time to really perform, um, I don't know. I have to put in question his mindset. It's all about mindset when it boils down to it's simple basic form is the mindset. Does he have the mindset to turn that dog on, to turn off any anxiety or nervousness that might prohibit him from really turning it on and um, like 40-inch verse said, trust his reflexes. It's a great assessment. Great assessment. Ain't no way you sitting here trying to compare dude to Floyd. You knew it was gonna happen. Everyone does. They always do. Floyd didn't run. He straight up stayed in the pocket and evaded a lot of shit standing there. Yeah, that's true. That's all from the hips. Oh, yeah. Floyd was that dude, man. Pretty boy was active. Yeah. So that again, this is all talking about. I mentioned Floyd at the beginning without reading these comments, knowing that that's what this conversation was going to turn to is a comparison to Floyd and talk about how boring he is. That's always something that's critics will, people who don't really know boxing will always mention that Floyd was a runner and he was boring. And those people, you just can't, they're incorrigible. You can't turn their mind because they just don't understand. They just don't know. They just don't know. They just don't know boxing. Um, so we'll see. I guess it remains to be seen. We need to see Shakur really step it up, fight somebody worthy and formidable, and turn in a dominating performance. I need to see that from Shakur, or what are you doing? Then what else are you here for? And I don't want to, like, what else are you doing? Because you're not doing much right now. And I take this personal because I cut for the dude in my own circles. A lot of people like in my own circles. A lot of people was already on. So I'm saying this as a video because I have to publicly declare that I've so far been wrong about Shakur. I was personally the only guy in my circle of, and I don't talk boxing with everybody. I'm a boxing snob, so my circle, we know boxing, and I will only discuss boxing with them because again, like Roger Mayweather said, most people don't know shit about boxing. I was the one in my little circle that was championing Shakur. Like, man, Shakur's that dude, man. I know he's got it. And everybody's like, you sure? Yeah. And right now, I have to eat that because he hasn't done anything to substantiate my praise for him. But I would hope that he can actually change that around. But I think the time is running short on that. So what are your thoughts? Give your thoughts. Like the video, dislike the video. Talk to me. I talk bike. And peace and blessings.